So today I wanted to look at 10 things that are like everyday. What? It's a good start, Diane. Okay, Diane. I want to look at 10 everyday things that are different in America than they are in Ireland. Probably gonna refine that title before I post this. Before I get into the video, I saw a comment recently asking what the thing was on the couch behind me. It's a killer koala, and if you, specifically you, the person who asked what that thing was on the couch behind me, does not subscribe, you will have your face eaten off by my killer koala. His name is Chewy, and Chewy by name, Chewy by nature, so subscribe. Also, check out my social media. We have a good time there. I'm trying to post more stories on Instagram, so there's that. Okay, so the first everyday thing that I had to learn worked differently in America is a big one: money. The attitude to money in America and Ireland is super different. American people largely borrow money and rent things. A lot of times I'd be seeing these amazing cars and then Lenny would turn around and be like, that person doesn't own that car, they're renting it or renting to buy. Or you guys prefer to say leasing the car. In Ireland, you definitely buy your car outright. Recently I was talking about how if ever I got a car, I might consider renting to buy it. Everybody said that I was completely crazy because the car would end up costing more in the long run.
You're crazy!
It just isn't the norm here. It's not what people do. I've also noticed that, I guess because America is such a huge country, big amounts of money just seem to just not make people go, oh. On Dr. Phil, a lot of times you have people who've been catfished, and I know those are extreme examples, but they'll be like, oh, I sent $1 million over to this Nigerian prince. And everyone's like, wow, tough break, $1 million. And I'm like, $1 million? That's a lot of money. And obviously to the regular American, $1 million is a lot of money, but it just didn't have the
Oh my god!
element that I thought $1 million would have. But I get in the aspect of the size of the country, a couple of million isn't a lot of money to you guys. The Taoiseach did his speech about the coronavirus the other day, and he was saying that they've set aside $3 billion provisionally to deal with this situation, and I'm like, holy moly, that's a lot of money. But I can only imagine how much it's going to cost America. Also, American people use checks, and Irish people never use checks. I think the last time I was given a check in payment was about 10 years ago, and I was like, that's, yeah, unusual. So it was unusual like a decade ago, and like now nobody gives checks. I think people in Ireland don't trust checks, whereas checks are very common in the States. Also, you guys use PayPal there. Like you could go into a business and you'd be like, do you mind if I PayPal it to you? And people would be like, okay, no problem, which doesn't really happen here. Also, you guys don't use cash so much. You pretty much all use cards, which actually in the last week with this whole social distancing thing has become a lot more common here. All the tap your cards everywhere. It's just tap.
Yeah, I tap that.
So maybe cash is going to become redundant everywhere. But in Ireland, up until very recently, we used cash like about as much as we use cards. So yeah, I find it pretty fascinating how just the attitude to how we use money is different. The next thing that's different in America is you don't see regular everyday people just going around on bicycles. Okay, I'm gonna say in small towns you would see it a lot more, but here in Ireland, even in the big cities, people go around on bicycles all the time. But not exclusively in the cities, also in the suburbs, also in the countryside, just everywhere in Ireland, wherever you go, you'll see people on bicycles. Whereas in America, it's definitely more depending on where exactly you are. And another reason for this, I think, is because you guys have way bigger roads, so I can imagine it's a lot scarier going on those bigger roads on bicycles. Also, I'm not sure what the legalities of going on all those roads is. I know you can't go on a motorway on a bicycle here. And your cars are absolutely huge, especially in Texas.
Check out my belt buckle. It says everything's bigger in Texas.
And like every single person's car was massive. I was just like, what? All the cars are huge. So if you're on a bicycle, it would be pretty intimidating, I would imagine. I am not a bicycle person, but a lot of my friends are, so I don't know how they would really get around in America. I guess they'd all just have to ride cars. Much like people don't really walk places in America so much, I guess they also don't bike so much. I have friends like that actually who will get in their car just to go 5 minutes walk away, but generally people in Ireland are good for bikes and walking places. The next one, and we all know that measurements are different in Ireland and in America, but the ones that really stuck with me was how differently you measure months and dates. We'd say the 20th of March, so the 20th of the 3rd, 2020, and you'd say March 20th. So then you'd say the 3rd, 2020. It's just a different way of doing it. I actually don't know that one's better than the other, but I do know that when I'm trying to organize my accounts, which is horrendous at the best of times that it's really confusing when I'm going through my receipts, because now I've done so much traveling to America. I'm like, is that the month or the day? Also, I believe we use 24-hour clock here, whereas you guys don't, but your army does.
1,400 hours today.
But we don't say it. So if it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we'll go, it's 2 o'clock. But we might write down 1400. But in America, people in the army would say, oh, 1,400 hours or 1,400 hours or something like that. Correct me in the comments. I've never been in the American army. Surprising that. The next thing that I've noticed in America is that a lot of places people don't lock their door, and I'm not referring necessarily to cities here. I was talking to people at one of the meet and greets, and they were talking about how they come from a town where you don't even lock your door. And you'd think this one would be the other way around. You'd think in Ireland that people don't lock their door everywhere, but no, not so. In Ireland, everybody locks their door, even in the countryside. But in America, it seems to be like a source of pride if you live in a place where you don't need to lock the door and people just go in and out your door. Now, I get that doesn't apply to everybody, but it seems to definitely be a thing that happens, which just doesn't exist here. Also, I noticed that any of the Airbnbs that I've stayed in have not got alarms, whereas in Ireland, like a lot of houses and apartments have alarms. And again, you'd think in New York City there'd definitely be an alarm, but there just isn't. And that's one of those everyday things that I was really surprised about.
I'm shocked.
I guess it indicates a level of trust in your community, but still nonetheless, like, bad things can happen anywhere. So I'd be inclined to always lock my door, but let me know below in the comments if you don't lock your door, and if so, why it's okay where you're at. The next everyday thing that I noticed is, again, probably down to the size of America in comparison to Ireland, and it's that dress codes are not as strict over there. And even when there isn't a dress code in place, clothing wise, it's pretty much anything goes. Now, don't get me wrong, in Ireland we're not living in Downton Abbey. You don't have to wear your shirt and tails everywhere you go. Although I probably wouldn't wear a shirt and tails, would I? I could if I wanted to, because feminism. But yeah, this is something that me and producer Lenny noticed when we were over in America, especially with regard to bars and pubs and stuff. A lot of times in Ireland, you will not be let in if you're wearing runners, or trainers as they call them in America. Whereas in America, they're very much like, you're wearing your hoodie and your jeans, come on in. I get that there are probably fancy places where dress code does apply, but in general, it just seems way more whatever you feel like. Also, you'll find people wearing their best cocktail dress in a restaurant, and then like 2 tables down, you'll see somebody in a hoodie and jeans. I think because Ireland is a bit smaller, we're all a bit more conscious, so you definitely do the what are you wearing thing before you go out somewhere. Or if I'm going to a restaurant, I might check out on Instagram what the kind of general attire is before I go there. And it's not a super strict thing, but it just seems to be a thing that just doesn't happen so much in America.
You can't wear stuff like that at church, man.
There are definitely places that are fancier than others and that would have a doorman and stuff, but I'm talking about the general everyday kind of places. There just doesn't seem to be a dress code. The next thing that I noticed in America is actually something that makes me really happy, and I wish we had a little bit more of it here. We've already talked about on this channel how people in the service industry tend to be really smiley and really nice, and there's been some debate over whether they do that just for tips or whether they're just inclined to be nicer. And one thing that makes me think that they just kind of are that way in a way is that they're kind of prepared to do things that are outside of the box. So if you have a special request or something, a waiter or a waitress will be like, yeah, no problem. Whereas in Ireland, they kind of can, not always, but they can look at you a bit like, that's a strange request, I'll go check if I'm allowed to do that. So for example, you see a lot more people asking for the sauce on the side, or can I get that without onions? And they're just like, yeah, sure, no problem. Whereas here they're like, I have to go check if that's okay.
Why are you making this so difficult?
Which isn't a problem, it's just how things are done here. Also, outside of restaurants, I've seen that be the case as well. On one of the trips, I had left something in one of the rental cars, and we didn't realize until I'd gone past security in the airport that it was in the car. And for whatever reason, the car rental service were just not being helpful in this case, but I ended up calling this parcel delivery place who went and checked in the car, got it out of the glove box, and ended up posting it over to a friend of mine who lives in New York. And it actually didn't take a lot of explaining for me to get them to do that. They were just like, okay. Whereas in Ireland, I find if you have a request like that, they're just like, what? That's not a thing we do. We deliver parcels. That's what we do. And usually you actually will be able to talk an Irish person around, but special requests are like very special. Whereas I guess maybe because there's a higher turnover of customers, they'd be used to unusual requests in America. I don't know if I'm explaining that one too well. Let me know if I have. The next thing is one I've mentioned before, but I don't know if I put enough emphasis on it. In America, pets are very much accepted in just general society. In Ireland, people love their pets, they're mad about their pets, but it's very much you leave your pet in your house when you go out. I am considered very unusual with my pet. Unusual / a bit of a freak.
You said it.
Because I bring my dog everywhere in his bag, and usually I have to do it undercover because dogs are not allowed to go anywhere pretty much in Ireland. In America, you can bring them to malls, and there's even like special areas for them to go. You can bring them on airplanes. You guys have a thing called an emotional support animal, and a lot of people seem to have their animal classified that way. And I think if I was in America, I definitely would have my dog classified that way because that's what he is. Sometimes I get really anxious if he's not around, but in Ireland, it's just not really so much a thing, an emotional support animal. Now, the idea of an emotional support animal does exist here, but it's very much a, sure, that's your emotional support animal, but it doesn't give you any rights to bring him anywhere. But you can call him an emotional support animal if you want. You can't bring an emotional support animal on an airplane. A lot of people have said to me, why don't you bring Chewie on an airplane? Because you're not allowed. You have to go through a lot of hoops to bring a dog in a cabin on an airplane, and it's pretty much 99.999% not going to happen. I've recently been looking into whether he could go on an American Airlines flight as an emotional support animal, but that's kind of been put on hold because nobody's going anywhere right now.
You can't leave.
If you're watching this in the future, it's 2020 and we're all in coronavirus lockdown. Hope you came through that the other side okay in the future. But yeah, in Ireland, people love their pets, but they're very much like put in a category of pets. They just stay home or they go for walks, but they're not like part of your everyday going out and about life. The next thing that's strange in everyday life in America is that school children don't wear school uniforms unless they're in like a fancy school. I might be wrong on that, maybe it's not exclusively fancy schools, but that's what I've been led to believe. So in Ireland, the standard is that you will wear a school uniform going through all the years of school. And actually this is one I even appreciated when I was a kid, because I didn't have to think about what I was going to wear to school every day. I had like 2 jumpers and 2 skirts and 2 shirts. Actually, you probably had more shirts.
I've never seen so many shirts.
But there wasn't that choice there. Now, you did manage to customize them because, you know, especially teenagers, they're like, I want to express myself. But if you went too far, like a teacher would pull you aside and say, like, you can't wear that. That's not part of the uniform. It also kind of took away a little element of the competitiveness, I think. And that was good, especially when you're a teenager and people are so inclined and susceptible to being bullied. It just took away something that you could be bullied about. When I was in kindergarten, which is like junior, senior infants, age 5 and 6, we did wear our normal clothes, but we wore a smock over it. So again, it was a great leveler, and also little kids get to not ruin their clothes and their parents can just bundle their smock in the washing machine. In 5th and 6th year, which are the final 2 years in Irish school, my school let you wear whatever you wanted because they actually felt like they were trying to prepare you for college and the real world, like you'd be able to decide for yourself. And the ironic thing about that was we all ended up wearing pretty much the same thing anyway. There were girls in my all-girls school who used to wear heels and mini skirts to school, and honestly, we all just looked at them like, what are you doing?
I mean, that sounds bad, but whatever.
For the most part, pretty much everybody wore their tracksuit bottoms and a hoodie and a t-shirt. The next everyday thing that is different in America is how you do floors. Like, they're totally different and it's confusing from a brain head. So in America, if somebody says that my room is on the 3rd floor, it means it's 2 floors up from the reception, because the ground floor is just 1, and then the next floor is 2, and then the 3rd floor is 3. Whereas in Ireland, the ground floor is just called the ground floor, and then 1 floor up is floor 1, and then the next floor is floor 2, and the next floor is floor 3. So you're actually 4 floors up, but it's the 3rd floor, if that makes sense. I hope it does. Again, it's just a different way of doing things. No one is right or wrong. It's just something that took a little getting used to, especially in elevators. One time I got stuck in an elevator because I was so confused about where exactly I was going. I just went up and down for like a good 10 minutes. That's probably a me thing and not generally to do with floors. And the number one everyday thing that I noticed is a huge difference over there is how you guys handle temperature and air. And again, this is one I've mentioned before, but I don't know that I've put enough emphasis on it. In Ireland, people have central heating. We will have radiators and stuff like that around your house, but we don't have anything for cooling. Well, we have windows. And the temperatures that Ireland kind of goes to means they're usually sufficient, although we will still complain of being roasting in the summer and freezing in the winter. But that's just how we describe temperature.
Stop being dramatic.
I have family over in Spain, and the way that they handle temperature is that they have air conditioning, but their heating system of the house is not so good at all. So kind of like an opposite there. Whereas in America, they all just kind of go, we can control temperature and air because we are Americans, which is fair enough. In America, you guys have really good air conditioning systems and really good heating systems equally. And I guess that's to do with the massive fluctuation in temperature that you have there. Also, humidity is a big thing. I can kind of see how opening a window just wouldn't work in the massive heat of some states. You guys' attitude to temperature and air is basically to shut the room off and then control it with devices. One of my patrons sent me this Dyson heater cooler thing, and honest to God, it changed my life. And when my friends come over, they're just like, what the hell is that? It's not that it doesn't exist here. People do have air conditioning units, just it's not common. I did get a little slagging over it. They were just like, open a window, Diane. But you know what? I actually love my Dyson thing. It's great.
Shut up!
What I did find strange in America is that when I'm walking around outside and then I go into a store, the temperature in the store is completely different than what it is when I'm walking around outside. And I don't know how American people handle that. Maybe you guys bring your jackets everywhere, but I would be walking around outside, fine, grand, lovely temperature, and then I'd go into a supermarket and I'd be freezing, like absolutely freezing.
Always with the drama.
And nobody else looked freezing, and they were all in t-shirts as well. So maybe you guys are just super used to it. But let me know below in comments what you think of the whole air thing. And that's it for today's video. I just want to thank the members of Squad over on Patreon. Their names are up on the screen right now. The Squad really helped me out with feedback and stuff, and right now we're doing a bit of a coronavirus diary kind of thing. Also, with the members of Squad, we chat every single month on Skype, so that's cool. We're really enjoying comparing notes on how the different countries are handling things. So if you want extra stuff, go check out my Patreon, because we have a good time there. That's it for today's video. Bye. Hi. Are you a killer koala? Yeah, he is. He's gonna eat your face off, rude person. Okay, so the first thing that I know, that's, yeah, usual. We good back there? Yeah, we good? I was talking, we've already talked about on this channel how people in the service industry, so somebody will tell me that my room is on the 2nd floor, and it whoa. But yeah, when you guys, you're not the thing. You're not the killer koala. No, you're the best little bear in the world. I'm sorry, you're a dog.